Hello everyone. We shall begin the formal session shortly as we wait for a few more participants to join. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the webinar on Faceless Assessment Scheme hosted by NextDime. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on 13th August launched the Transparent Taxation Honoring the Honest platform that provides faceless assessment, faceless appeal, and taxpayers charter. As per the PM, this platform would instill a sense of fairness and fearlessness in the taxpayers. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman added that these initiatives would help ease the compliance burden of taxpayers and increase fairness and objectivity in the tax system. She also added that there shall not be any physical interface between the department and the taxpayer, which will bring in certainty of information. The FM further announced that any communication from the income tax department without a DIN, be it a notice, letter, order, summon, or any other correspondence will be invalid and would not stand in the eyes of law. So how would the faceless assessment system work? What challenges it will entail? Would it be as successful as envisaged by the government, and would it achieve the stated objectives? Let's hear it from experts in today's webinar. With that, I would now like to invite Maulik Doshi, Senior Executive Director, NextDime. With near 2 decades of experience and chartered accountant by qualification, Maulik advises multinational clients across industries. He leads the global transfer pricing practice and specializes in Indian and foreign transfer pricing rules, APAs, cost sharing arrangements, transfer of tangible and intangible property, and cross-border restructuring. Maulik was recently recognized as highly ranked practitioner by Euromoney's Transfer Pricing Expert Guide. Welcome, Maulik. Over to you.
Thank you, Jiten. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here. I would like to welcome you. I hope everyone is safe and healthy. Before we begin with the session, I would like to welcome and introduce our speakers, our esteemed panelists today. We have Mr. Dinesh Shablani, Principal Commissioner of Income Tax, REAC. Mr. Shablani is a 1989 batch IRS officer, a postgraduate in industrial engineering from IIT Delhi, and also a postgraduate in computer science. He has worked with the System Directorate in UIDAI, and is associated with the Faceless Assessment Scheme since last year as the Principal CIT REAC. Welcome, Mr. Shablani. Thank you, sir, for joining us and sparing your valuable time. I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate you and the entire department for this bold and path-breaking initiative that the department has taken. It's really something which, as a country, we all are proud of. And I think India is the first country that has taken such an initiative. So really, we are looking forward to a successful implementation of this. We also have Mr. Ramesh Khaitan. He's a Senior Vice President, Global Tax Head of Lupin Limited. Mr. Khaitan needs no formal introduction. He was recently adjudged and recognized as the India's Tax Leader of the Year award by the ITR Asia Tax Forum 2020. So congratulations on the award and welcome to the panel. Thank you for spending.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
We have Mr. Vaibhav Mangal, Vice President Taxation, Vodafone Idea. He's a seasoned professional with over 2 decades of experience in the areas of finance, taxation, and accounting. Vaibhav has kind of had a very diverse industry experience, having worked with Convergys, Nokia, PepsiCo, Amazon, and now with Vodafone Idea. So we'll really get a all-round view from Vaibhav. Thank you, Vaibhav, for joining us and sparing your time.
Thanks, Maulik.
And lastly, we have Ms. Anita Basur, a chartered accountant with more than 23 years of experience in the field of direct tax. She has served clients across industries. Litigation and tax representation has been a forte. She's a very known name in Aikar Bhavan or the tax department. And she has a kind of a on-ground experience on dealing with assessments. And she would, I'm sure, would be able to throw a lot more kind of light on how the faceless assessment scheme would work.
Thanks, Maulik. Thanks for the introduction.
This is actually a paradigm shift in the way interactions would happen with the tax authorities and the way assessments are done in the country. Why I call this is a paradigm shift is not just that this is faceless, but most importantly has several other features and elements that would change our perception in the way the tax assessments are done. The features include internal review process, a technical review unit, focus on technology to deliver the taxpayer services. This is all like a dream come true for a taxpayer. And it's really for a taxpayer no longer subject to a whims and fancies of one single individual. The Prime Minister, the fact that the Prime Minister announced this scheme really shows that how significant this change is, and it was worthy of Prime Minister's time. So this is kind of really a paradigm shift and a path-breaking thing in India from a tax reform perspective. The way we have designed this webinar are in two parts. The first part would be the introduction to the scheme, how the scheme would operate, which Anita would take over in the next 15 to 20 minutes. And thereafter, more importantly, I'm sure everyone is waiting for it, and would be an interaction with the elite panel that we have in form of question answers, and whatever questions you as participants have, we would request you to put it in the question answer box, and we'll take them towards the end of the session. So I would now like to invite Anita to set the context and give us an understanding on the scheme. Welcome, Anita. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Maulik, for the introduction. I will take you through the faceless assessment scheme. Just as a precursor to the faceless assessment, we would like to, as we are aware that keeping in mind the Digital India drive, the government started the journey of digitization in 2006 in the direct tax front, with the e-filing of the tax returns, first in case of the tax audit cases, and then taking it forward to a lot other assessees. In 2008, the government came up with the e-payment of taxes, making e-payment compulsory. In 2009, the CPC was set up, and basically the idea of CPC was to electronically verify the returns that have been filed by the assessees. The digitization then went on to e-proceedings, which in 2015 was started at Delhi and Mumbai. And by 2017, e-proceeding became like a norm. It was extended to various other cities as well. Of course, there was an option yet given to the taxpayers to opt out of e-assessment and to prefer the physical assessment model. In 2018, in the budget 2018, the e-proceedings were formally introduced. In 2019, the government started with the e-assessment scheme on a pilot basis, where about 58,300 odd cases were taken for e-assessment. And finally, in 2020, faceless assessment has now become the norm. Just prior to the e-assessment, as we are aware, assessments would be handled physically, and in that regime, the taxpayers or the assessees would visit the tax office physically, file the submissions, explain the details to the officers through a face-to-face meeting, and there would be multiple levels of discussions and various documentation, and a lot of paperwork was involved. many a times, as we are aware, on common issues, the views taken by different assessing officers were different, irrespective of whether it is in the same jurisdiction or in a different jurisdiction. This, of course, led to a lot of litigation, both for the department as well as the assessees, and of course a lot of unproductive time being spent. I'm saying unproductive because we know that in India, resolution to tax litigation takes anything between 10 to 15 years. That is the general norm. As you know, as the faceless scheme introduction on 13th of August 2020, the finance minister announced the faceless assessment scheme honoring the honest platform was introduced for transparent taxation. And the announcement of the faceless assessment, faceless appeal, and the taxpayer charter was done on this day. The idea of doing this was to move away from a process-centric and a power-centric regime and making it more people-centric, so as to ease the burden of compliance on the taxpayer and making this a more fair, objective, and just system for everybody. The idea of faceless assessment is that the physical interaction be eliminated and there is more certainty in what is to happen. Also, in this process, it has been decided that each and every document would have a document identification number. This is to ensure that there is traceability and an audit trail for all the notices or communications that are being done by the government. Also, in the faceless assessment, it is believed that the department's resources will be utilized optimally, and the domain and sectoral knowledge of the various officers would be useful and used in this process. This will, of course, bring about a clear and uniform approach on the various legal issues that are happening, and the government intends that this will bring in a belief of fairness and fearlessness in the taxpayers. This making the entire environment a more friendly one, and also the intention is to have minimum government and maximum governance in the entire process. I'll just now take you through what the framework of the faceless assessment structure would be like. As we can see, NEAC is the interlink or the interface or link between the tax authorities, between the taxpayer and the various units of the department. NEAC is situated at Delhi and was formed in October 2019. NEAC is headed by the principal CCIT, and it is through NEAC that all the communication would be happening between the taxpayer and the authorities. The NEAC would get connected with the taxpayer either through email or SMS or through the income tax portal. Also, the NEAC would connect with the various units of the regional assessment centers, and even inter-unit, the communications would be happening through the NEAC. Talking about each of the units, the assessment unit would be responsible for the identification of the issues in the assessment. They would seek clarification on the various issues. They will analyze the details that are received from the taxpayer. Sorry, they would be responsible for closing the assessment. The verification unit will be responsible for carrying out various inquiries, the cross objections, if any, verification of books of accounts, if required by the assessment unit, would be done by the verification unit. The examination of witnesses, recording of statements, etc., also would be the responsibility of the verification unit. The review unit will, once the orders are passed by the assessment unit, the review of the orders will be done by the review unit, and based on the data that is available, they will look into the factual and legal aspects and close the assessment. In case any additions are proposed in the assessment order, the review unit would ensure and see that those additions are well insulated, keeping in mind the judicial precedences. The review unit will also look at the arithmetical accuracy and correctness of the orders that are being passed. Coming to the technical unit, as the name suggests, technical unit will be the legal counsel or advisor to the NEAC and the assessment units, and they will provide advice on accounting, legal, transfer pricing, valuation, and audit aspects. So this is how the regime is going to function. I will, Malik, if you can just move to the next slide. So this is how the hierarchy of the faceless assessment would be. Like I mentioned, there is going to be a National E-Assessment Center, which is going to be headed by the principal CCIT. And there would be a CIT and the rest of the team reporting to the principal CIT. Also, the technical unit would be reporting to the NEAC. Then there would be regional principal CCITs, and the CCIT for the regional assessment center would report to the principal CCIT. Each of the regional ACITs, AC will have a technical unit, a review unit, a verification unit, and an assessment unit under it. As we are aware that the faceless assessment hierarchy will take care only of the assessment, and therefore for all other matters we will have the jurisdiction staff, and there would be a principal CCIT jurisdiction with the entire set of cadre under the principal CCIT as the hierarchy. Malik, if you could move on. We've covered what the salient features are, and Malik, next. From effective 13th of August 2020, all the assessments have to necessarily be concluded under the faceless assessment scheme, and any order, if passed outside the scheme, would be considered as non-est. As for the submissions that are going to be made by the taxpayer, these have to be made electronically and will have to be signed digitally or electronically verified. I have given a pictorial depiction of how this is going to be. So once the case is selected, as far as the taxpayer is concerned, once the case is selected, notice will be sent by the NEAC to the taxpayer calling for the information. This information will be called for over email or SMS or through the e-filing portal. The taxpayer in turn will coordinate amongst its team, prepare the submissions to the various details called for, and file the details at the e-filing portal. And the NEAC, once the submissions are received, it will forward it to the relevant assessment unit or technical unit or verification or review unit, as the case may be. This is as far as the taxpayer is concerned. Coming to how it is going to be at the department level, NEAC, as I mentioned, is at the helm of everything. Once the case is selected and identified, based on an automated tool, the case will be transferred to an assessment unit. The assessment unit will call for the various details, etc. The taxpayer will submit this information to the NEAC. After reviewing these details, if the assessment unit feels the need to send it for to call for any technical data, NEAC will connect with the technical unit and take assistance from there. If any verification needs to be done, again, the assessment unit will go to NEAC and have the NEAC will then transfer the case to a verification unit where the verification will be carried out. And once this process is done, the assessment unit will prepare a draft assessment order. This draft assessment order will go to the NEAC. The NEAC will review the draft assessment order based on the based on the risk management system, and if it feels that the assessment order is fine, it may pass the final order. If it feels that certain review needs to be done, the draft assessment order will go to the review unit, and post comments from the review unit. In case any further information needs to be called for, a show cause notice will be issued to the taxpayer. If there is a requirement of a hearing, a virtual hearing could be granted. If at all there is a show cause notice issued and further information is called for, then after this information is received, the NEAC would have this verified or assigned to another assessment unit. The same assessment unit is not going to carry out the assessment. It will go to another assessment unit, and based on the inputs from the review unit and additional information received, that assessment unit would pass the draft assessment order, and if everything is fine, the final assessment order will be communicated by the NEAC to the taxpayer. So this is how the entire system is going to work. And coming to what all would be covered under the faceless assessment, the scrutiny assessments under 143(3) would get covered. In case taxpayers do not respond to notices and a need for best judgment assessment arises, this also will be covered under this scheme. And in case of reassessment matters also, the assessment proceedings would be taken up by the faceless assessment team. In case no return has been filed and the NEAC requires a taxpayer to file the return, on having the return filed, if a notice for scrutiny is issued, that assessment also would be carried out by the faceless assessments scheme. It is only the search and survey matters or international tax cases which will not get covered under this regime. So this is all about the faceless assessment, and I completely agree with what Maulik mentioned, that this is an absolute bold step and a really required step that has been taken by the tax authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita, for the initial elaborate focus on how the tax assessment in the new faceless scheme would work. And obviously, like any new introduction, this would have teething challenges, some initial challenges, but I'm sure as the program is designed, as the infrastructure is designed, it would really kind of be really useful. Sir, but Dinesh sir, if you want to kind of just add on to what Anita said, you want to throw some more light on the modus operandi in terms how it's going to work, how is department geared up to take up the faceless assessment thing. Your initial comments on this would be really helpful, sir.
Good afternoon to everyone. As far as this scheme is concerned, this has been in vogue since last year, and I am associated with the implementation of this scheme since last year when it was called as a e-assessment scheme. But the word e-assessment was giving some kind of confusions that some e-proceedings were already in vogue in the department, in which they are not necessarily faceless, but like questionnaire and reply, both were going in an e mode. So to distinguish it from the e-proceedings that were in vogue that time, this time they have changed the word to faceless assessment scheme. And as far as the presentation is concerned, it was very much informative. Couple of points I would like to make on the perception part of it before someone gets a wrong perception. Even though the CCIT at the local level is the head of the REAC, he is not applying his mind to the assessment process. He is only administrative head. And as far as assessment unit is concerned, it comprises of the highest officer at the level of Joint Commissioner. And even PCIT is not involved in the process or workflow in this process. So even the PCCIT NESC is also administrative head regarding the policy matters and releasing of SOPs on this subject. So he is not actually approving the individual orders. So you can consider the NESC as a software or a machine or something like that, where some business rules have been fed in. I mean, there was a talk about the RMS also, the risk management system. So once it's go to the risk management system, it is not something like it's a body which is manned by some people to apply their mind. Risk management system is basically NESC's child, in the sense that it's a software. There is a mention of automatic examination tools in the scheme, and you can say that the reasons for selection of a case into scrutiny are already fed into that. And going by those reasons, there must have been some value at risk, some difference in certain parameters based on which the case was selected for scrutiny on prima facie basis. So whatever additions the assessing officer has made in the draft assessment order, they are tested on that software. Whether they are high pitched, then also the RMS takes a cognizance. If they are too much low pitched, then also the RMS takes into cognizance. In both the cases, it may flag the case for review. Otherwise, it will simply be a pass-through entity. If it calls for no addition, the order will be released through NESC. If some addition has been proposed in the draft assessment order, it will go as a show cause notice to the assessee. So just for these couple of points, I think my presentation was very elaborate, and I don't have much to add on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ramesh Khaitan, you want to give your initial comments on what are your thoughts on the faceless assessment scheme and how successful it will be? Sir, you're on mute. Jiten, if you can unmute everyone, that would be good.
See, this is a very good scheme, and it will bring a lot of transparency and symmetry. One is that it will take away the whimsical, or you say personal interpretation of the tax officer. But I think to make it more effective, there should be some kind of SOP on some issues, so that across the nation, one view is taken in one particular issue. If there are industry specific issues, then the same view should apply to 8 of the e-assessment units, all the 8. So the biggest challenge which I perceive is that when the initial notice is issued from the National E-Assessment Unit, it grants only 15 days time. Is there, I want to ask sir, if it is not possible to give the details in 15 days time, will there would be any further extension, or it will be best assessment, best judgment assessment? This is one.
Yeah.
And second thing, the restriction is of 10 MB now. We have faced large taxpayers, basically large industry. We have seen in past cases when we had opted for e-assessment, etc. The basic challenge was to send the files electronically containing voluminous data. And again, then the voluminous data were sent, then they will ask for hard copies. I don't think there is, I think there is no scope for in this scheme, but how that will be again, because one need to take out the printout, somebody will have to take the printout of those vast data details, information. Otherwise the review unit or the technical unit or the verification unit will not be able to do the job in a right manner just from going through the laptop or etc. So these are the actually challenges, and we have seen the GST now 3 years. The GST has brought a lot of transparency, lot of transparency, and I think, but again, it has not been able to reduce the litigation. The litigation has gone up on various issues. So my is that whether that kind of glitches will not happen in IT system also, because now GST is 3 years old. Still, there are a lot of technical glitches. The computer, the system doesn't work. The government system is down. The taxpayer system may suffer from some technical glitches. So how do we address all these things?
Can I respond?
Mr.
Yes.
Sarvani, before you respond, I will ask Vaibhav if he has any initial thoughts, and then we can come back to thoughts and come back to you for your comments on that.
Okay.
So if you have any initial thoughts on the faceless system, over to you. You'll have to unmute yourself, Vaibhav.
Yes, thanks. Good evening to everyone. So as rightly mentioned, it's a good initiative, especially in this pandemic period we are in. I think this could not have been the better time for us to go in this regime. And I think this will bring more transparency. The only thing I think, which I think we need to look at, any scheme which will come, it has to be administered in right sense or in right spirit. So if let's say in this regime also, if let's say the authorities are saddled with, let's say, predetermined targets as were done in the past for collections or for let's say getting money for the government, then I think we will go back to what we are doing for last so many years. So it is very, very important that the issues which are raised are well thought through. Those issues which are, let's say, debatable tax positions, which on which there can be either if or no, yes or no, on which then the government then spends their effective time, and judiciary also spends time on those things which are really needing decision making, instead of just doing litigation on each and everything and then wasting time of the courts and of the SSCs. So I think that's very, very important. But I think we are in the right, we are taking the step in the right direction. I think if implemented properly, I think next 2-3 years we'll be in a different era.
Right. Thank
Over to you, Dinesh.
Dinesh sir, if you can address these two more questions, which is primarily there is first on the infrastructure, whether the tax department is geared up, has the right infrastructure to take on the volumes that is there, because sometimes we've been hearing, obviously not off late, but maybe a couple of years back, there were a lot of issues on the glitches on the tax e-filing portal, and especially the last few days of July or last few days of October, November used to be kind of heavy load on the system. So whether the infrastructure is kind of geared up to take on the ESS, the faceless assessment thing. And second, what Ramesh ji pointed out in terms of the initial 15 days notice, which everyone feels is kind of too less to respond to.
Yeah, so as far as the infrastructure is concerned, you have mentioned some problems relating to the e-filing in last few years. But as I'm observing this e-filing portal since last almost 4 years or so, that peak time load is being effectively being taken by the e-filing portal, and there are no incidents like website crashing or something like that. So maybe the initial portal that we first of all launched was having some bottlenecks, but I think the new portal very much takes care of the workload. And from the assessee side, uploading the documents on that issue I'll come later, but I'll take the first point first. Mr. Khaitan mentioned about the procedural SOPs. Yes, they are already a part of a scheme that under para 12 of the scheme, the CCIT NESE with the approval of the board will come out with not only the procedural SOPs, but also the legal issues in case some consistency can be arrived at. But nevertheless, what I can feel sure about is that there would be consistency on the appreciation of facts at least. So even though, I mean, a single-minded officer or single person working on a case may have some biases, his own interpretation or understanding of the case, or maybe some facts are like he's not too much digging into the facts, or considering some facts are irrelevant facts. So there could be some individual element while a single officer is involved over the case, but we are having checks and balances in the form of the risk management system, as well as the review unit. Review unit works more or less like a pre-audit system, where they can flag not only the high-pitched additions, but also the low-pitched additions. And every individual is accountable to the extent of its contribution. And see, the personal interest may be because of any reason, or maybe personal bias or personal ego or anything of that sort is totally missing in the system. There could be some tendency to err in the favor of revenue, but nevertheless, that is being countered by the review unit. And there is another beautiful element in this whole scheme is that ITO and the ACIT, which are our cutting edge officers who actually frame the questionnaires and draft assessment orders. Every correspondence or every order that goes from them will be vetted by a joint CIT. So review unit also, there are two officers, you can say, the officer and the joint CIT. Similarly, verification unit also twin officers, like one junior and one senior officer. This is how the various units operate. So as far as the factual appreciation is concerned, I don't think that there will be much of an error. But yeah, judicial decisions point of view, your point is well taken that within a particular jurisdiction, the view should be consistent. So there has been a question asked on this issue that what kind of jurisdiction the NESE or RESE officer would be following in due course when they are dealing with a particular case. So every RESE officer, when he takes up the case, wants to deal with any issue, he will be guided by the jurisdictional jurisdiction of the field AO, like where the PAN is situated. So if the PAN is there in a central charge, the central charge falls under, let's say, Mumbai High Court. So he will follow the ITAT Mumbai as well as the Mumbai High Court for the jurisdiction purpose. So it is not that he will apply some other logic because of his own station, or because here even the allocation of units is also random. So you don't know where the case goes, but he will be bound to take the view of the jurisdictional high court, which actually pertains to the assessee, where the assessee is normally assessed. So on that issue, of course, we may have a different sets of orders from NESE, because some belongs to X High Court, some belongs to Y High Court. So there will be some differences on this issue, but at the end of the day, all litigation matters are like this only. And whenever the litigation goes berserk, the board always comes out with some clarifications or its stand as to what stand they are going to take in the litigation. But as far as the routine litigation is concerned, I think that the orders would be very much sound on the facts as well as on the based on the decisions made by the local ITAT or high courts. So scope of litigation would be very, very minimum. And since there is no personal element involved, it will be purely on information. And whatever confrontation we will be doing will not be based on any targets or something like that. Like it is like power of information. If we have information, we will confront the assessee and examine the case from that issue rather than being biased from personal angle or even the departmental or organizational level. Like budget constraint is not a factor. I mean, we have totally segregated this assessment function from the rest of the field. So we are only doing assessment, and whether a case leads to a demand or not, it's none of the concerns of the faceless assessing officers. I mean, there cannot be any enforcement that you have to necessarily raise the demand. And more so, when the demand is raised or assessment order is passed, the case immediately goes back to the jurisdictional assessing officer. So demand collection and all other things and relevant targets are in the domain of the jurisdictional hierarchy, which is already existing. Of course, that also has been restructured, and many taxpayers will find their PANs being migrated from one AO to another because some mergers have taken place in the field formation. But nevertheless, assessment is the key function that will be dealt in a faceless system, and rest of the functions would be dealt by the residual hierarchy. Regarding this workload capacity of uploads and all that, currently there is a limit of 50 MB, 50, and one can make the attachments of 5 MB each and multiplied by 10 such attachments. And I had a discussion with the systems directorate who have put all these limits. Of course, these are all subject to change based on the experience also. But then he suggested some of the basic tricks that we can make, like PDF scan is always better than JPG or any other photo scan kind of thing. And decent PDF contains a very low memory. I mean, you can also zip the files. You can also use the Word and Excel files for uploading instead of PDF files. So because everything that you submit through EVC or the digital signature, it's authenticated, whether it may be a PDF or a Word file or Excel file. So I think considering a decent resolution, the 50 MB should be sufficient to capture the size of 250 pages in one submission. And I think that is acceptable norm. And we also need to learn as to how to be precise in our submissions instead of like attaching the entire case laws. We can only do away with only citing the citations of them. I mean, these are the cultural changes which will automatically take place on both the sides. Like we also need to I mean, again, I mean, that sometimes used to be sarcastically commented in the field that assessee tries to psychologically affect you by giving you bulky submissions. So, so that in any case is not going to take, because bulk is not going to be seen. It will be hardly a PDF file. Maybe after opening, you'll see 250 pages and all that. And if you really want the attention of the officer on a important points, there should be a tendency to be precise. Otherwise, you'll have the same complaint that, okay, I submitted 250 odd pages, but he considered only my one page. This is an human element. It has nothing to do with any department or something. Like if you throw some bulky submissions to someone, he is bound to ask you that flag me the important pages or where the important points are contained. So on that front, I think 250 pages per submission should be decent size of submission. But nevertheless, if issues crop up, we will be definitely more than pleased to increase the size of this. As far as I think I have covered
That
almost
15 days point.
15
That
days
the
point.
15 days time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 15 days time has been mentioned in the scheme in response to 143.2. Now, if those who are in taxation already, this is in response to the first 143.2 notice. Now, if you see the practice in the past, this notice used to be rarely replied also, because the assessee used to know that this is a formal statutory notice. Now here the NESE has given a 15 days time notice, and this we experienced difficulties also from the being faced by the assessees, and the act has, or the scheme has mentioned 15 days watertight line, but as a matter of natural justice, our PCCIT NESE at that time relaxed it for another 15 days, up to 2 months, on the basis of principles of natural justice. So nevertheless, this is a formal notice. Of course, the non-compliance will carry its own penalty, but we have been liberal as far as receiving of the reply of that notice is concerned. Thereafter also 143.2 non-compliance is not going to form the basis of any 144 or a best judgment assessment. We are going to follow that notice with the proper questionnaire, and will give you sufficient opportunity so that you respond. It is not one notice, sometimes 2, 3, 4 notices, any number of notices can go depending upon what is the bandwidth of the assessing officer and time available with him. And till now, I mean, I can say that since we launched the scheme in the month of October 2019, we are yet to do our first 144 order.
Sir,
So
it's very nice on your part that you have cleared the apprehension that the 15 days notice can be extended by the state e-assessment, faceless. The thing is that supposing I get the taxpayer gets the notice and 15 days time, the initial period. Can he make the replies in part, or if the part replies of the notice will be accepted, or he has to submit all the details one go? If he is not able to submit all the details, then should he ask for the time? So can part submissions can be made?
yeah, part submissions are subject to the grant of adjournment for the remaining submissions. So one should not take it for granted that once you submit a part submissions, you have done a compliance. It is not a complete compliance, but nevertheless, there is, whatever comes in our on our table or on our portal is what we are going to accept it in any way. Like if the part reply has come, we will definitely give you, if we have time available. I mean, more and more we are going closer to the time barring date, perhaps we may not give you any time. So, but nevertheless, part replies we are accepting and giving the assessee further notice to submit the full compliance.
Thank you, sir. That was really heartening to note. Yeah, I think a lot of apprehensions were assured by you right now in terms of how the system would work. You very well explained the MB limits or the size limits in terms of attachments, etc. So a lot of those things I'm sure would be kind of addressed. And the fact that we are, any new system will have initial challenges, we are all kind of ready and happy to support those challenges, see how we can together overcome those things. Just also one question I wanted to kind of check up with you as a common man. I just wanted to understand what functions would remain with the jurisdiction officer and what functions would now be performed by the NESE and RESE. So like as a taxpayer, I generally used to go for a 281 certificate or a 197 certificate or a TRC application, etc. So all those still remains with the jurisdiction officer?
Yeah, pretty much they remain with the jurisdictional officer. We have only assessment function with us. And assessment, once it is completed, even the rectification order will be passed by the jurisdictional officer. Any reopening will take place by the jurisdictional officer, and after the pendency is created. Pendency is deemed to be created when, let's say, assessee files a return in response to 148 and 143.2 notice is issued by the field officer. Or if he doesn't file a return and 142.1 with a questionnaire is issued. So at that stage, he will be transferring the cases to faceless scheme. Similarly, when you are dealing with any remand reports from the appellate authorities, those remand reports will also be replied by the field officer, the jurisdictional assessing officer, and even the set aside assessments may be a part set aside or a fully set aside, that they will all go to mostly to faceless. I mean, that all depends upon from where the original order has been passed. Suppose it's for a central, just like you know that central charge and cases which are assigned to international tax are outside the purview of faceless. And if your original order was belonging to that AO, naturally the set aside assessment will go back to that exceptional category only. So normally any other order beyond these two exceptional categories will always go to faceless, even though it was passed by the legacy jurisdictional assessing officer.
And since we
Sir, I have two very critical questions, three critical questions. One is whether TP comes under the international tax. There is a lot of divergent view. Even the principal chief CIT Mumbai has said that in the case of non-resident taxpayers, e-assessment, faceless assessment will not be done in case of TP audit, but for resident assets as SSCs, TP audit will be covered by faceless assessments. And TP is not like your regular assessment because there is a lot of economics and lot of business decisions, etc. So what is that? There is no prerogative of the SSC to ask for the virtual hearing. The option is with the national unit, or I think say to put in different way, department. Department may grant the virtual hearing if it wants, otherwise it will not. Next issue is that, sir, the CBT says 10 files of 10 MB you can attach 10 files, each containing 10 MB data. You have said 5 MB data. So I need that clarification on that issue. And the third issue is that 148 note, once the assessment is received from National Assessment Unit in faceless assessment, and 148 notice is issued by the jurisdictional officer, then it will not be in line with the spirit of section 148. That means the assessing officer is substituting his own opinion on the or reasons to believe on the assessment finalized by the faceless assessment officer.
So
with the
there would be a lot of litigation on this issue.
Yeah, can I reply now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So as far as the TP is concerned, I mean, perception could be made like TP officers generally work under the international wing of the department. International tax wing of the department is having two branches. One is international tax, where the non-residents are assessed, and another is a transfer pricing. Now, transfer pricing does not necessarily mean that it deals with international transactions. It deals with the domestic specified transactions also. And secondly, transfer pricing issue, it not necessarily arise only in the case of non-residents. It will arise in the case of residents also, in case they are doing some domestic specified transactions and some transfer pricing is involved. So TPU will be in use or maybe referred to by the international tax wing, where the non-residents are assessed, as well as referred by us, who are using assessing the resident taxpayers. So reference to TPO will come from the faceless wing as well as the non-faceless wing also. Now, as of now, we don't have any SOP in place to that level that to make the TPOs also faceless. Like as of now, as the things stand, unless some SOP comes in picture, the matter will be referred by the AU to TU because it involves a transfer pricing issue. And thereafter, the TU will make a reference to TPOs. Now, wherever the jurisdiction of the assessee is situated, some or other. So TPO hearings will not happen in a faceless manner as of now. So maybe going forward, there could be move to convert the TPO, bifurcate the TPO wing also into two parts. like one catering in a faceless setup and another catering to the non-resident jurisdiction, which is in the field, which is not working in a faceless manner. So to that extent, TPO hearings as of now are not in the faceless domain. Of course, the reference will come from the faceless setup as well as the international tax setup to the TPO. Same applies to the DRP also. Like we will be passing the draft assessment order, and assessee will be free to go to DRP as per the old practice or legacy practice only. As of now, there is no faceless move on that front, and time will only tell whether there is any move. So, so as far as the virtual hearings are concerned, I cannot say that faceless, this TPO is a faceless. So there is no question of any asking for any virtual hearing there, because pretty face-to-face hearings may happen with the TPO as of now, unless there is some SOP coming, and then we'll see that. As far as the other cases are concerned, like assessee or any third party where they want to have a personal hearing, of course, personal hearing is not something which is mandated under the law. The Supreme Court judgment also is very clear on this, that what we are obliged to give is the opportunity of being heard and not a personal hearing. So we will give you opportunity of being heard, and suppose the written submissions are sufficient to understand the issue, and in that case personal hearing may not be given. In any case, what we are talking about personal hearing is a virtual hearing which may be given under a specified circumstances. So let us wait for the specified circumstances under which that virtual hearing will take place. So far we don't have any SOP in place right now, and that is very much mandated to be released by the NEAC with the approval of the board. So that will of course be limited to some complex cases. Let us first of all have an exhaustive list of those circumstances where it is being permitted. So after that, if something is left out, then we can consider that, okay, in this particular case also, I mean, there will be some element of discretion, but not that much discretion on the part of CCIT to approve or reject a particular request for personal hearing.
Sure, sir. I think that's really relevant. And on that point, I wanted to bring Vaibhav here to understand, Vaibhav, there is a provision of this personal hearing which CBDT may provide on a specified circumstances. I wanted to just take your view in terms of how do you find the difference between a personal hearing or a face-to-face hearing that you would generally do in a tax assessment vis-a-vis the faceless assessment scheme. And in what circumstances do you think would you want a faceless, actually a personal face-to-face hearing or a personal virtual hearing, as Mr. Shavlani suggested?
So, so basically, see, as mentioned, so we would require any kind of interaction, whether it is, let's say, through virtual mode or is it through personal meeting at the office of the tax office. I don't think that matters that much. The more important thing is in a scenario wherein I think I need to go and explain my scenario or my circumstance or my let's say peculiar situation or the case, because you know English language or any language which we use has limitations, right? Because whatever I write, I may try as much as I can, but still there will be some things which I need to just speak about. For example, let's say there is a query as to why your profits are lesser this year vis-a-vis last year. I can write it on a piece of paper, that's fine. But then if I can explain the real reason behind it, that there was a competition issue or there was something, let's say some damage which has happened, and I can let's say sit across or maybe talk about it, that sometimes really helps. Because and especially in scenarios like a transfer pricing, I think and as sir rightly mentioned, that in a TPO maybe it's not going to faceless as of now, so that may be helpful. So I'm saying it, though the discretion has been given to the tax department, but yes, there are situations wherein if the assessee says that I want to talk in person, I think that much liberty should be given to the officer and also to the assessee to allow that much if the time permits.
Right, right. Anita, I wanted to get you on your here. You kind of would be attending, or at least used to attend 300 hearings in a year. So what happens now? Like how would you feel your approach would be different, or your presentation would be different in terms of the faceless part?
So, Malik, generally what used to happen was even in case of a face-to-face hearing, of course, I completely agree with what Vaibhav says that, going there, sitting in front of the officer makes a difference because you understand whether, what you're trying to say, is he, with you, in sync with what you are saying, which is not going to be the case anymore. But yes, there will have to be more emphasis on the way you present your matters. You will have to have excellent writing skills and drafting skills so that you're able to now convey your point across to the officer so that he understands what you want to say.
Right.
May I come in for a moment?
Yes, sir.
See, your point is well taken on that because there is a psychological element of satisfaction involved in a personal hearing. But nevertheless, see, normal questions and answers can go in a written mode like E mode. And nevertheless, whenever some addition is proposed to be made in the draft assessment order, that will be crystallized by way of a discussion. There will be a discussion by the assessing officer, and then he will conclude that so and so amount is added. And that draft assessment order will go to the taxpayer in every situation, whenever a modification which is prejudicial to the assessee is being made. Now, that will be the perfect opportunity when you need to realize that perhaps you have gone little short on your previous submissions, and you can now be more focused. But this is the only addition that is under consideration, and where factually the assessing officer has taken mistaken on certain point, maybe some facts he has not considered or not discussed to logical conclusion. So I think even after reading a draft assessment order, you can make a very good written submissions to bring it to the light of the assessing officer, and there should not be any necessity of personal hearing. But if the draft assessment goes very berserk, I mean, to the extent that you come to a conclusion that he has not at all understood the facts of the case because he doesn't understand the even trade or business I'm engaged in that case, those complicated matters can definitely be cited for asking for a personal hearing. But normally in all circumstances, it is not necessary that you will need a personal hearing. And let us the scheme roll out in first place, and let us see what kind of draft assessment orders you are getting and whether it is difficult to explain in a written form or not. And then such grievances will arise whether the personal hearing was given in a fit case and not given in a fit case. After replying this, there was one more missing point raised by Mr. Khetan, which I did not respond in the earlier stint. So it was regarding 148. 148 after the faceless assessment order has been made by the faceless assessment wing. So I'm not trying to say that whatever the facts were available on the record, based on the same facts, the jurisdictional assessing officer will come to a conclusion that the income has escaped assessment. You know that change of opinion based on the same set of facts is not permitted under the 147. Secondly, 148 that we are contemplating may happen, may not happen in a particular case, depends upon the information, if any, that has flown into the department after the assessment order was passed. So in that case, of course, the information will be new, not taken into consideration by the faceless AO, may form the perfect ground for recording the reasons to believe and going ahead with the 148. But just to have a change of opinion, even on legal footings, it is not sustainable. And on the same facts, I don't think that any jurisdictional assessing officer will be having any power to reopen the assessment.
Thank you, sir. So just one last point we wanted to check with you on that was on the recovery proceedings. How would recovery proceedings work in this thing? Will the stay application also be heard online, and it would be heard by the jurisdictional officer, or it will go to the NEAC?
Jurisdictional officer only. It will go to the jurisdictional officer, and I'm not saying that all the hearings before the jurisdictional assessing officer are bound to take place in person to person because there also you must have noticed in one of the announcements that they are also being advised to go as faceless as possible. Like as far as possible, they will work in electronic mode, but definitely there will be better scope of face-to-face hearings.
Right. And so we saw yesterday a notification coming on the selection criteria for cases for scrutiny. So what would be the basis of selection by NESE? Would the current criteria under CAS continue, and would you see a reduction in number of cases that are being picked up for scrutiny?
The selection of cases into the scrutiny has been consistently going down over the years. If I talk to you in terms of percentages, the last year the selection was only 0.26%. So that cannot be called as a very high selection of cases into scrutiny, but nevertheless, CAS criteria, once they are run on the given database, the NESE would be definitely issuing the notices in CAS selected cases. However, rest of the cases like 148 and others will come from the field.
Right, sir. Thank you. So we have kind of a lot of audience questions coming on, and we are running out of time. So I want to come to the audience question. But before I do that, very quickly, I wanted to hear from Ramesh ji and Vaibhav both in terms of what is your advice to your kind of colleagues and peers in terms of how they would be better prepared to handle the faceless assessment. What are the, if you want to just give some quick tips, that would be useful. Ramesh ji, you want to?
In the faceless assessment era, one has to be very careful about the facts. You know, you have to put across your facts very properly. And then your documentation, whatever documents you send to the department, you have to put a lot of emphasis. And third is the company has to gear up to the technology. If the company is not geared up to the technology, then I think if the tax department will face, my tax means taxation department of the company will be at the backlash. You know, the department will be against the wall. You know, so I think given the Corona time, you know, sometimes gap should have been given, say from 1st April 21, the faceless scheme should have started. And so that those who are not ready in digitally, or those who have not made investments, they make investment and make themselves. Second thing is that the cutoff date should have been from new assessments, new returns, which are, they should have been taken not in between. Maybe next year's assessments would have been taken in the faceless assessment, because now August is there and the time barring for March 17 assessment where the TP audit is there is March 21. There is not much time left. So there would be a lot of challenges. You have to pull out because there are various companies, still their records are not fully digitized. They are not AI, artificial intelligence equipped. There is no data analysis, etc. They have not made the investments. So that could be a very big challenge, you know.
Right. Whether we want to add how some more tips for how we are better prepared to handle the faceless assessment scheme?
Yeah, so from my side, I think starting the basic stuff, the housekeeping in terms of, let's say, whose all email IDs are updated on the government portal, that has to be looked at, because see, all the notices are going to come through that email, right? And if your IDs are not correct, you're not even looked at it, you will face issues, because then department will say, I have issued notice to you, and you will say, I have not got it. So then that's a problem, right? Then you have to ensure that you have a process wherein someone is checking the notices on the government portal on a daily basis, especially in the season time, right? The DSCs have to be registered properly on the system of the government, so that when you respond, you are able to respond properly, right? Then the availability of the data with you, which I think Ramesh ji mentioned, has to be available on a very, very quick basis. See, what happens is, we being in the tax teams, we are at the mercy of the finance teams and the business teams to get the data, right? And when we raise that, they are obviously involved in the day-to-day stuff. They are involved in the quarter closings, year-end closings, and other things, and different other projects. And all this data, when we ask, is 2 years, 3 years back data, right? So now, if you have not, if you don't get that data in time, and you have a 15-day window to respond, you will have a big problem. So it has to be really bring to the management and to the teams, all the teams, that okay, this is what has come in, and there is a big change in terms of earlier, when there used to be a notice, I used to say, oh, I have let's say 3 months to respond, and I have, let's say, I will respond to these 3 things, then I will respond 3 more things, and all that will not work, right? So you have to be now on your toes to be ready to provide all this information. And the last thing I think is, which I think we already discussed, that you have to be really meticulous in the way you provide your answers, the indexing, the facts, the legal positions, the annexures, everything has to be really meticulous, because there is no way you are going to explain anything to the officer. Whatever you provide has to be making so much sense to the officer, that you are basically, just like when you go to the court, just like the lawyer explains the things, or the lawyer helps the court to come to a right decision. It's like that. This is what you need to do. So you have to become a lawyer now, in a sense, and you have to help the officer to come to the right conclusion. So I think these are the important tips.
Thank you. You want to add any?
Yeah, Malik, just 1 or 2 points I would like to add here. One is, when we are talking about the 15 days timeline, I think for us, we should not consider it as 15 days, but consider it as 12 days or 13 days, because we need to keep in mind the technical glitches that we may come up with, and, the last minute rush that may happen. Another point is, say we receive a questionnaire containing 20-25 points. In the normal times, like Vaibhav rightly mentioned, you would respond to few, and few you would say that I will respond to later. Even if you are not able to respond to it immediately, I think you will have to have a proper marking system, and you'll have to keep tab of what has not been responded to, so that in the next submission you take care of it and keep it ready. And last and most important, I think this is the way the assessments are going to happen. And so just like we start our audit preparation, etc., in advance, even from the assessment point of view, we should have our documentation well prepared, and we know the manner in which the submissions are generally required to be made to the tax department. So we should start keeping those things prepared in advance.
Right. Thank you, Anita. Dinesh, one last question to you, which is more like, what are your expectations from the taxpayer and the professional community over here? We have kind of a few hundred people listening to you, so it would be good to spell out the department's expectation from all of us.
These are my personal expectations. Of course, you'll find many other expectations mentioned in the taxpayers charter. I think we need to take care of the compliance now more seriously, in the sense that, last year when the scheme was launched, some people said that let the faceless officer do 144. This was the common parlance we used to hear, and we'll get the relief from CIT appeals. Now you must keep in mind that CIT appeals is also going to become faceless now. So in case I have a record to prove that I have given you sufficient opportunity of being heard and you have not responded, my 144 order is going to be sustained by the CIT appeal at least. Right. So, another thing is rightly said by Mr. Vaibhav, is that you need to keep tab on your profile section. I will allay those concerns that technologically the taxpayers are not ready. They are very much ready, because they have been filing e-returns through tax portal. e-filing portal. So there is not much technology involved as far as the uploading of replies is concerned.
Right,
But as such, no upgradation on that front is required. I mean, it may so happen that the assessees might be doing themselves or might be entrusting it to their chartered accountants or representatives to manage that particular account. But I think when, let's say, a particular CA or a representative is holding 300, 400 clients, even if he receives SMSs, they are masked. They are containing masked PAN. So they will not be able to identify as to whose respect this particular message has come. So, so therefore, to have the assessee's own tab on the what's going on, at least the primary or the secondary, mail ID and mobile numbers both included, one of these primary or secondary should be that of the assessee, so that he also knows that something has come up and he can follow up with the his representative before he forgets.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I think we all look forward to this new kind of path-breaking scheme, and we all look forward to how this scheme would operate. Before we come on to the audience questions, Jiten, would you have, while I kind of arrange the questions and see what of them have been answered, not answered, would you want to put up the poll and let's see, there are a few questions which we wanted to take the view from all the audience and participants in terms of what do they feel about the faceless assessment scheme. So if we can start the poll right now, it would give us a really interesting perspective. In the meantime, I'll just quickly have a look at the questions that have been posed from the audience.
Come on.
So there will be few questions that would be coming on the screen, and you can kind of vote for it. We'll have kind of 10 to 15 seconds to vote for each question. So that is how we wanted to kind of do that. So let's start with that thing.
Malik, can you see the results on the screen?
Yes. So the first question was, do you think the scheme would be successful in near future and achieve its stated objectives? A vast majority of 78% kind of has confided with that, saying that yes, they believe that the scheme would be successful. There are few people who have their initial doubts, but I think a vast majority, a overwhelming majority is confidence of the success that the scheme would bring. We can go on to the next question, Jiten. Jiten, is the next question on?
Yes, can you see it?
Yes, yes, it's there.
I can see only the first question, Jiten.
No, Malik, it's there already on the screen.
Anita, you want to take up that? I'm not able to somehow see that question. So you want to take up the results that have come out?
Yeah, the results have not yet come, Malik. The question is still on the screen. Yeah, so the next question is, do you think this scheme will increase or reduce the number of litigation and disputes? And about 50% feel both ways increase as well as reduce. And very few feel that there will be no change in the current situation.
Okay. The third question, the most lauded objective which the Prime Minister had mentioned, will the scheme reduce corruption? Again, Anita, you'll have to take up the results.
Yeah.
I'm somehow not able to see that.
Yes, so the question is, will this scheme reduce the corruption? And 64% of the people feel yes, definitely it will reduce corruption. And it's only 9% who feel no, it will not. And 18%, 27% say maybe.
Okay, great. So that was a good kind of view from the audience in terms of how the things would work. There are a few questions from the audience, so I'll quickly take up those questions. I'll take up the questions which we have not been addressed till now. So let's see how we'll be able to address some of those questions. There is a question which states that presently there is a considerable time gap between the appeal effect and the uploading of the same on ITBA. Hence, there is a huge mismatch between the demand shown and the demand actually recoverable. How will the new system ensure better position? Sir, you want to take up this, Dinesh sir?
I mean, this issue is not actually related to the faceless assessment part, because as I said that it will be dealt by the jurisdictional hierarchy only. And of course, we need to not only follow the Citizens Charter on this subject, but even the Taxpayer Charter, which has got a legal mandate from now on. Maybe in near future will specify certain standards of compliance, not only from the assessee side, but also from the department side regarding the standards of disposing of certain matters. Of course, demand management is an area which has been bothering both sides quite for some time. And I think this is a time that we need to address this problem as well. I mean, this is a problem, but we are trying our best to reduce the time gap in passing of appellate order and giving of appeal effect.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. This next question, it talks about what will happen to the notice sent if the email ID of the person who has resigned or retired and it's never received by the SSC. I think we all, both Dinesh sir and Vaibhav did mention that it is our discipline that we need to ensure that the income tax portal is updated with the latest email IDs of the people who are responsible for looking at the tax matters. So it is more of a self-discipline that we need to bring in. There was another question on, is the assessment only restricted to the cash reasons, or would there be a choice of assessing officer? I think Dinesh sir mentioned that it is restricted to cash reasons unless there are other aspects, right?
No, I'd like to intervene here. I mean, it's restricted to the cash reasons if the particular case has been flagged as a limited scrutiny case. But even after a triggers being limited, a case may be selected for a complete scrutiny, and there the assessing officer is not bound by the cash reasons alone. And regarding the compliance point, apart from keeping your profile section updated, let me also tell you that you will always find the copy of notice in your e-filing registered account. So you need not to always bother about your email. You can just log on to the portal and just go to the e-proceeding section, and you'll find that what notices are pending for compliance. A copy will always be placed on the portal, apart from being sent to your emails.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. I think the other questions were more of repeat, where we have already taken up during the course of our panel discussion. So
Maulik, I had just one question. Sorry.
Sure. Go ahead, Vaibhav.
Just one question to sir. Sir, one question. Like for these set-aside cases pursuant to IT-18 High Court orders and Supreme Court, I'm assuming that this will be for the set-aside cases, the proceedings will be done by the regular assessing officer, right?
No. Any assessment, I mean, the word used is assessment. Any assessment which is not, in respect of a case which is not assigned to international tax or central charge will be null and void if it is done by the jurisdictional hierarchy. So as per the scheme and as per the current law, it has to go to the faceless. And naturally, the jurisdictional assessing officer, when he transfers the case to faceless, he'll have to upload the previous order and other related documents for faceless to take up the case from there on.
Right. So that's it from our side. Vaibhav, Rameshji, Dineshji, any last comments from your side? Otherwise, we are through with all the question answers. I want to thank you really from the bottom of our heart to be kind of sparing your valuable time and be available for our participants and audience. It's been a really wonderful interactions. And really thank you for joining us for the webinar today.
Thank you so much. And it was
Thanks
a
a lot.
pleasure joining you.
Thank you, Mr. Dinesh. We came to know, we were enriched by your knowledge and information. Thanks a lot.
That's the least I could do. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much,
Thank
everyone.
you, sir.
With that,
Thanks,
we
everyone.
come to the end of this webinar. Thank you all for your time and participating in the webinar, and look forward to kind of hosting more such webinars in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Vaibhav.
you.